Splendor of the Father's glory, from his light engendering, light of light, light's cradle and spring, thou day all days. I wanted to talk today a little bit about nature. Both nature out there, what we call nature, or now call the environment, which I'm not sure I really like that term, but also nature in the philosophical sense or in the theological sense of the word, what the word has meant for thousands of years before actually being applied to the environment or the nature out there, like animals and plants and rocks and mountains and things. Let me back up. We do talk a lot about nature in the media and so forth. There's a ton of stuff about nature. A lot of people are trying to protect nature against the sins of man, protect it from being destroyed by our wantonness. So there's a lot of talk about nature, but what there's not a lot of talk about is nature in its philosophical sense. And of course, the two are connected, but we've caused a lot of confusion in our time because we have failed to connect the two meanings. When we talk about nature theologically or philosophically, we're talking about something that's inherent, something that is inherent to something. So we can talk about a human nature. And a human nature is something that we all share. It's a reality. It is a thing. It is a true thing, and we all participate in it. Every single human person that exists, whether they live for a day or whether they live for 105 years or however long, each human person shares completely in human nature. And we know that this is the case when we talk about nature out there. We're talking nature as in the environment. That nature is something given. It's something that exists. It's not something that we manufacture or that we make. We don't manufacture the mountains. We don't make the woods. We can participate in that a little bit. I can create a garden, for example, and I can plant plants in that garden, and I can arrange it in a certain way and bring order to it and make it beautiful. But I don't get to choose the conditions under which that garden will flourish. In other words, it will have certain needs. It will need sunlight. It will need water. It will need fresh air, and so on and so forth. About all of nature, we don't make it. If we destroy it, we can never recreate it. It's not in our power to do. And this is also true of human nature. That we have a nature that is unique, that is contingent, which is to say that it exists in relationship with other natures, with other things, and that we do not get to choose the conditions under which it will flourish or the conditions under which it will perish. It's something that is given to us that we participate in and that we cannot choose and we cannot create and we cannot make. And this is important because in our day, in our time, so many of us have sort of grown up under the belief that my personal decisions, my personal choices is what makes who I am. What makes me a person, what makes me Father James. And I'm here to tell you that that is a fallacy. And not only is it a fallacy, but because it's a fallacy, it will lead us to incredible frustration and incredible suffering. What makes Father James is not Father James. It's his created nature that God has endowed him with from the beginning. I make choices in my life. I have some directions that I need to take responsibility for, to go either this way or that way. But ultimately, the only choice is, do I make choices? Do I choose something that is in accordance with nature? Or do I try to choose something that is in deviation to nature, that is against nature, that will in fact disfigure nature, and so cause incredible turmoil, incredible conflict, not only within me, but around me as well? Those are really ultimately the choices that we have to make. When Christians talk about free will, when the Holy Fathers talk about free will, they're not talking about choices as such, not talking about choices as we understand choices today. Like, oh, I think I'll choose, I like blue, so I think I'll choose a blue car, and that makes me because I drive around this blue car, and I also like this product and not that product, and I use an iPhone but not the other kind of phone. I use a Mac computer and not Windows, and all that kind of stuff. Well, these are the so-called choices that are being sold to you by the marketers of our age, and they're making a boatload of money off it, and they're really leaving you spiritually deprived. Nature, free will, is connected to nature in the thinking of the early Christians. So my will is free when I'm living in accordance with my God-given nature. An acorn has the nature of becoming an oak tree. It cannot become an apple tree. It cannot become a pear tree. It cannot become a maple tree. It can become an oak tree. That's its nature. When the conditions are right, its nature will be fulfilled. Its will be free to become what it is by nature to be. And the same goes for human nature. We are created for a certain end. We are created to live in a certain way. We are created to realize certain things in our lives, certain potentials. And these potentials are spiritual potentials. And that's not to contrast them with physical potentials, because it's all one and the same, right? The body is the sacrament of the soul. The body is the visible expression of the invisible life that we all live. So what we do in our bodies expresses what is inside of us. So when we're living according to our nature, when we're living with free will, and our will is free, it's because we are living in such a way that allows our nature to express, to develop in its proper way, and to manifest itself. And when our will is not free, when our will is in bondage, then we are living in a way that scrapes against, or that is counter to our nature. We're trying to bend nature to our own will, to our own devices, to our own stubborn beliefs, or even just to our delusions. We misunderstand what the human life is for and what it's about. And this is happening across the board in our modern age. So many of us are trying to live at odds with our true nature, with our true self, as we were created to be. And that self is created to be in communion with God, it's created for knowledge of God, and it's created to do the works of God in creation, which is the work of bringing forth ordering, right order and justice and peace and flourishing. But only, not that through our own ideas of what those things mean, but through actually through the reality of who and what God is, through knowledge of God. So the whole life of the church is oriented towards this. The whole life of the church is miraculously and wonderfully given to direct us, to train us, to teach us, to free us to live according to our nature, and so to fulfill our deepest nature, and so to really truly be free. An eagle is free on the wing. That's what it's made to do, to soar. But if you've ever watched an eagle try to walk around on the ground, it's just it kind of waddles around, and it's, very awkward. A fish is free in the water. A fish is free. It flies through the water. It swims. It can rise. It can go to the depths. But out of the water, it's as good as dead, because it's of its nature to exist in the water, to live in the water, to be in communion with water. And so we are made to be in communion with God. And when we're not in communion with God, we are like a fish out of water and as good as dead. Rejoicing may this day pass on, our purity as virgin dawn, like fiery noon our faith to be, our minds not dark when falls the